All right, folks, welcome to React. So if you're with my software engineering course, welcome to the last module. This is actually usually the last module of courses that have React in them. But we've made it through Flask, we made it through JavaScript, all this other stuff. If you're coming through just for this course, you should already have some JavaScript knowledge. We are going to be utilizing our Flask backends that we've made. If you haven't made one of those, I have a URL you can use. It's gonna be a little bit different, but we'll kind of get there when we get there. So we're going to be making the front end for our full stack applications here. So they're still making our phone book, but in this case, we are going to be designing front end. We're going to use React, which is technology from Facebook. And historically, I've used React 17 for this, but in late 2021, React 18 was released, and it's slightly different. It's basically the same thing, but we do have some drama with dependencies, and we'll talk about dependencies when we get there. But for right now, I am going to let you know that this course, this content has just been updated. It is bleeding edge. It is really, really nice for a bunch of really new, for even 2023 technologies. Don't be scared by this. Again, the theory is going to be basically the same, right? It's like kind of learning new. Once you understand how the code works, learning new things is kind of like learning new slang, where you're like, okay, I've heard this, I've seen this, I'm not totally sure what it is. What is that? Oh, okay, that's what that is. That makes perfect sense, and I get it now. Or you say that doesn't make any sense, but at least you understand when somebody else is saying it, what they mean. If you've made it this far in any of my courses, you've heard me use plenty of slang, and so you've probably figured this out. So you get the idea. It's really not too bad. So that's what we're going to be doing. So I have here my terminal, and I am going to actually be using, I think, npx create-vite. I think that's the right thing. Yep, cool. So we're going to put the same long thing in. This is the name of our project, right? So we're gonna have mine's gonna be coding samples, self-paced, full stack, React, phone book, update for version 18. You do not have to name it this. You can name it Fred if you like. I do not care, but just be aware that this is going to be the name of your project folder. So you got that. Select a framework. Now this is really nifty. So create Vite allows us to pick which framework we want to use. If you're ever curious about other ones, so this is just vanilla JS. This is very similar to what we've done with our Spotify project, right, where it was just JavaScript and HTML and CSS, which is honestly a pretty good, safe bet to go for most of your projects, especially if you're doing stuff at home. If you're doing production level stuff, then yeah, React and Angular and Vue and stuff are great. But vanilla is the easiest, followed by Vue. Vue is actually, I highly recommend after you finish the React course, build a few more React apps and then just take a quick look at Vue. Their documentation is very good and very helpful. I have learned things about React because I've learned Vue. So just throwing that out there too. But obviously we are messing with React today. We've already done a to-do app, and we did that in just plain old JavaScript. I would like to make it abundantly clear to everyone that there is a difference between React and TypeScript. We are going to be using TypeScript. I'm going to talk a little bit about TypeScript and why we're using it, but please be alert to the fact that just because we're getting a lot of errors as we're coding this, or you will be, there's TypeScript errors and React errors. They are not the exact same thing. And I will point out along the way what the issues are kind of as we come to them. But TypeScript is becoming industry standard. TypeScript is almost overcoming JavaScript in popularity. It's all it is JavaScript, but it makes sure that we tell it what different variables to expect with functions. We tell it what different data types are so that we can't accidentally do things like add a string to an integer or subtract a string from an integer, which doesn't make any sense, right? So it doesn't make any sense. Well, JavaScript will still try to do it and it won't tell you there's an error. TypeScript will make you tell it what to expect, and there will be errors if you try that kind of thing. So we're going to stick with TypeScript. And so we're going to do npm install. I'm going to pause the video while it does that. I need to cd first. And now I can do npm install. It helps if you follow the directions, you know. That'll take a second, so I'll pause. Neat. So one other thing I want to point out here, this is called a build pack, right? So, or a building tool is Vite. Vite is actually created by the same people who make Vue. So Evan Yu gets credit for that one. And Vite is French for fast. And so I believe in a previous project we used create React app. That is actually no longer the standard way to create a React app. Vite has vastly passed that in popularity over the last year. The to-do list app that I showed you, I recorded that in fall of 2021. It is now spring 2023, and Create React App is a little bit outdated. So you can still use it if you want to. If you prefer that one, it's totally fine. It's really up to you. Vite is faster as a server, so it reloads your app faster as we go, which you'll see fairly quickly. And like I said, just showing you some of the newest, coolest tools for React as we're doing this. So, and then we can do, I'm going to pull this up in VS Code. So we've got that installed. It was all very nice and pretty. And I'm going to pull this up in VS. And first thing we're going to want to do once it wakes up, I'm going to pull open a terminal. I just want to run it. I just want to see what it looks like. And we can play around with it a little bit. And you'll see immediately that the Vite version of a base project is automatically, immediately cooler. All right, there we go. Now my computer's woken up. Okay, so first of all, that was really stinking fast. And second of all, I'll come back over here and pull it open, and boom. So here we have this, and we already have interactive stuff. How cool is that? You can click on this, and it sends you to Vite. Very nice. And somewhere on this page, yeah, it says Evan and Vite. Very cool. And then you also have the React docs if you'd like those instead. Actually, React just got new documentation. Oh yeah, here we go. The beta docs. So again, you have your option between the two. I think the beta docs are substantially better. One of the things I'm going to enforce as you are working through this part of the course is that you learn to read documentation. I cannot begin to tell you how important that is. Look, I'm gonna get all full screen on you, right? Read documentation. If you're curious how to do something, go read the instructions, especially because if you're learning a new topic or whatever, it really, really is useful to just like go and read what the people who made the thing want you to know about it, right? And so we're gonna use that with some other stuff, but again, you're gonna say, will this site? Yeah. So anyways, so this site, the new React docs, the beta ones, says we aim to switch this site to be the main one. Presumably, by the time you're consuming this lecture, they will be getting very, very close. So again, they are very, very close, and they will eventually just pass it over, and so then you'll get to this page instead. So anyways, you got React here. These are the old docs, and some people like these better. I really think these are not very useful because we're not even going to use the style of React. But we'll get to that when we get there. So anyways, so there's just a documentation. Those are just things we're going to be looking at, and we're going to go ahead and ruin this. Can't wait. So first of all, let's just do a little bit of exploring. So first of all, this SRC thing is short for source, and that's where our source code comes from. So this is going to be where the main application logic lives. This is where going to be all of our files are. Again, we should have seen something fairly similar when we did Create React App, but it might have looked a little bit different. And again, if you visit somebody else's code, node modules, now we'll talk about those. So the source is where the code that usually the developer wrote themselves usually lives in the source folder. That's the most interesting part of the entire process. Public is just going to be some files that are accessible to everything. Again, this is just the Vite logo, which is kind of boring. It's just this thing is all it is. So we can actually delete that, frankly. And it might get mad. It probably will get a little bit mad, but I really don't care that much. If we ever refresh the page, it might get grouchy. See, Vite logo. How cool is that? And our assets, again, we have the react.svg here. We can delete that too because whatever. And now it's actually mad. Now it's decided that it's having a bad day. And again, it's just different ways of importing the same thing, but that's fine. And I'm actually going to do Control-C and kill that off so it stops doing that. We have an app.css. We're going to get rid of that. But I would like to point out that you can look at like app.tsx and see how it gets imported here and how they end up doing class name equals logo, for example. Right? And so what's the class name logo? And then you can look at your app.css and go and figure out how they styled logo, right? So that's how you would use that with regular CSS files. We're not going to do things that way because I found something cooler and better, and you can add more stuff to your resume. And it's not even that hard to figure out. So I'm going to delete this one. See ya. We're going to go back to our app.tsx, which will now be unhappy about that. And we'll get rid of that. That's not real. We're going to get rid of the use state thing, so it's going to be mad about that in a moment as well. So I don't need that anymore because we're not going to have a counter. And eventually I'm just going to get rid of all this as well. So we're just going to have an empty div here. And it's going to say, this is my app. Great. And then export default app. That's great. We're not going to need this either. So I just delete that. Bye. And we have a main.tsx now. And this is kind of our home concept. And this is how we do React now. So if you look at an older version of React, you can actually see on React 17, this is arranged a little bit differently. There's still tutorials out there for React 17. That's part of why I showed you the old documentation, is if you come across versions of React that look a lot like React, this right here is how one of the best ways to know what version you're on, as well as looking at the package.json. So coming here and saying what version of React is in the dependencies. And if this is 16 or 17, then that's going to be kind of important to note that that's different, because you're going to end up writing things a slight little bit different. Another one of the things that's a big difference between 17 and 18 is in React 17, you had to import React all the time. And you see here that it's not even being used. And it was really odd that that namespace was in there and there was no point to it. So they got rid of that in React 18, which is great. Now it's cleaner. We don't have to read as much. We can get right to the code. Cool. You're probably thinking, that seems kind of odd that you would have to be that detailed about that particular thing. It is a little bit odd, or like just that you care that much about whether or not it's on the screen. I really don't care all that much personally, but again, it's for every line of code we're paying eventually. We're doing this for free, but when you have big applications, if you have like 10,000 files on google.com, and some of those files, each of those files has some extra namespace at the top of the page, you have to pay for the rent on those servers. Like, it's expensive. And so we're just being frugal. All right, get ignore. I think we should be all good here. Yeah, so I'm on a Mac, so DS Store, we want that on there. We might add some stuff to this as we go. We'll see. Yeah, we want the dist. That's good. All right, cool. Other things to check out here. Index.html. Again, React is injecting, it's using JavaScript to inject all of its content into this div ID root. And we've got a script saying, look at main.tsx for information. Also notice there's a lot less boilerplate here than there was on Create React App. That's, again, these are parts of decisions that they made saying, oh, we're going to do this instead because it's much, much faster, it's much lighter and much easier. And we like speed and we like lightweight. And as long as it still works, then we're usually pretty happy as developers. So we've got this here, div equals root, and script is module. And that's our entire thing, right? It's inside of this, and then all we have to do is figure out ways of kind of porting stuff from into main.tsx. We've got our app here. What's in the app? Well, here's our app. What's in the app? There's this div. We don't have any other components or pages now, but you kind of get the idea about how that will work. So we're making good progress. I'm going to wrap this video up by checking out the rest of these files here. And node module should also be in here. Yeah, good, it is. Cool. Just double checking. So when we do git init, this should turn gray. All right, package lock JSON. We're not really concerned about that one. That's a security thing for NPM. Package.json will tell us, first of all, you'll notice that for our to-do list, we had npm run start. We are now using npm run dev because that's what Vite uses as its script. But we also could change this to applesauce, and then we would have to do npm run applesauce. And this is nice. It's nice to know that that's what that is, because you can have any number of other commands that you could put in here. You know, like I could have a we're gonna do, this is gonna be insane, but you're gonna be entertained. Python, or we're gonna have a main.py here, right? So our main.py is just going to print success. I really hope I don't screw this up and shoot myself in the foot. But so you can have this here. Just again, this is a very silly thing to do. But we could have Python, actually Python run script, and this will be Python 3 main.py, and we're gonna have a comma there. So now I should be able to do again, if this works correctly. I haven't done this in a while, but npm run python run script, and there we go. So we see that it actually printed out success because that's what happened. So all this is scripts. These are just commands that run other things usually, and eventually we will tell somebody else which ones to run, kind of thing. When we put it on the actual interwebs, kind of like Flask run, it's the same idea. Just in this case, we can customize what is actually happening with that, which is a nifty thing. We've got these dependencies, React and React DOM. So there's things that we've installed. We're going to install a whole lot more here in a minute. And we've got these dev dependencies, which include things like TypeScript, Vite. We've got TypeScript version of React and a TypeScript version of React DOM. Usually, if you're using TypeScript and you're having import errors, or it's saying, oh, I don't know what that is, and there's TypeScript's mad, it's usually because you should have an @types version of something that you've imported, right? And so all this is, dependencies are things that get sent to the cloud when you actually upload it to the internet. Dev dependencies are things that you're going to be using while you're building the application, but it's not going to be needed to run when you put it on the internet. That's the only difference between these two things, and that's kind of what's going on here. You can change the name of it here if you like. You can actually give it more metadata, like author is a pretty normal one. Me, mwahahaha. And then you get your little comma, right? And so this is stuff that, like, again, when you put this on the internet, like, these things will be visible somewhere. I don't remember where exactly, but you get the idea. And yeah, so there's that. tsconfig.json. We're not going to mess with this one, but this is essentially a bunch of rules for how TypeScript is going to run. We do want to make sure that JSX is in here because we're going to be, again, what happens is when we run the app, it's going to take the TypeScript. It's going to do what's called compiling it, which is taking from one language to another one. That's a simpler one. It's going to break down TypeScript into JavaScript because browsers only run on JavaScript. Thank you. But it's going to take the TypeScript, break it down, turn it into JavaScript, and then it will run in the browser. And so this is part of the rules for how it's going to do that because it needs to know what version of TypeScript we're using, which version we're going to change it into. And in this case, it needs to know that we're going to be writing JSX because obviously JSX is way different than regular JavaScript. The other one is allow.js, false. So this is going to actually prevent us from using regular JavaScript inside this application. The reason that this is important is, again, we're going to be filtering, making sure that nobody's trying to write crummy code and loosey-goosey JavaScript inside of our TypeScript app because that can cause errors as well. So that's the idea here. Include source that's saying where to look at, so it's in the source folder. And the references are including this, which is just some other information for it. And then finally, our Vite config. And we're not going to be too concerned about this one either, but we got this, and we should be able to go back to npm run applesauce, and it should work, and we should be able to come back over here, refresh the page, and it says this is my app. So that's our initial setup here for React for our phone book application, and we're going to keep cruising this in the next lecture. See you there.